In typical Mark fashion, the gospel writer sandwiches one story inside another. And it would be tempting to focus on one or the other of the two stories. In fact, that's what I have done in the past. I've either preached a sermon on the healing of the woman who had suffered from a bleeding disorder for the past 12 years, or I preached a sermon on raising from death of the 12-year-old daughter of Jairus. But that's not what the writer intended. The accounts are laid out for us in such a way that we are supposed to see them side by side, not as isolated healing stories. We're supposed to notice the differences between the two recipients of Jesus' healing grace. The young girl is only 12 years old, the average age at which menstruation begins. But the woman is at least in her mid-20s and has been menstruating nonstop for the entire lifetime of the young girl, possibly due to an abnormality in her reproductive tract, a hormone issues such as hypothyroidism or even cancer. The young girl is the daughter of a leader of the local synagogue. She comes from a place of privilege, and her own powerful father advocates on her behalf, but the woman has no one. There's not even any mention of a husband. Maybe she has lived as a single woman all her life because of her condition. Or maybe she was divorced when the husband became aware of her illness. The community, no doubt, upon learning of her bleeding, has ostracized her and has nothing to do with her. She is alone and has run through her finances in search of a cure. In terms of social status, she is the polar opposite of the daughter of Jairus. And we shouldn't overlook the actual healings. One takes place in the privileged privacy of an official's home. Curious onlookers are ushered out of the room, and Jesus is allowed to do whatever is necessary to restore her to life. But the other healing takes place among the pressing crowds of common folk who are vying for Jesus' attention, and the desperate woman of no status essentially steals his power from him. But if we linger too long over the miraculous nature of the healings, I'm afraid we might miss the point the gospel writer is trying to make. By laying these two stories out side by side, the reader is supposed to see that despite the extreme differences in social status, both were healed. In fact, the condition of the woman of low status was taken care of before the young girl of privilege. But unless we are careful readers, we might overlook something that I think is a very important part of the stories. When Jairus approaches Jesus, he asks Jesus to make her better and save her life. Those are two very different things. He's asking for Jesus to fix her present circumstances by making her better, but he's also asking for Jesus to give her a future by saving her life. Now, you may think I'm trying to find something in this text that's not really there, and that may indeed be true. But I think we can see what I'm talking about more clearly in the parallel story of the woman. When the woman touches the cloak of Jesus, she immediately senses that she has been fixed or made well. Our text says, immediately the flow of blood dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her affliction. So if she has been made well, after she confesses to Jesus what she has done, why then does Jesus tell her to go and be healed? It's as if there are two healings taking place. One is the healing of her present circumstances when the flow of blood stops, but the other is one that is more holistic, one that impacts her spiritual health. And that's the healing to which Jesus is referring when he says, "Go in peace and be healed of your affliction." Jairus asked for Jesus to make his daughter better right now so that she might live into a future of hope. And Jesus fixes the woman's present circumstances so that she might also be healed and live into a future of hope. Those futures probably looked very different for each woman. In my mind, I imagine the young girl, after having tasted death and being restored to life, grew into a woman who never took for granted a single day after that. Every breath she took was a gift, and she knew it. I imagine her getting married and having children and teaching them to appreciate every second of life and not to waste it on resentments and jealousies. Her children would have grown up having learned that as much as lies within you, love God and love your neighbor. When her father asked that she be made well so that she might live, this is what I think he had in mind for her. And the woman who was healed of her 12-year bleeding, I imagine her restored to community. And the courage and tenacity she showed in claiming a healing for herself would have lasted throughout her life. Knowing full well what it is like to be cast to the outer margins of society, she opens her home to other women who have experienced the same. Women who have been divorced, women who have been pushed away from society by a male-dominated religion, women who have suffered at the hands of patriarchy. That's how I imagine healing looking like for her. When Jesus told her, "Go in peace and be healed of your affliction," maybe that's what he saw in her future. The addict and alcoholic are made well when they are finally able to put aside the drink or drug. But they experience healing when they do something with the future that they have been given. Cancer survivors are made well when they take that last chemotherapy treatment. And they experience healing when they offer support to others who have been diagnosed with the disease. The person who lands that job which will cover their expenses is made well. But they experience healing when they are able to volunteer some of their free time to help folks who aren't as fortunate as they are. For the person who has been told that they are an abomination because of who and how they love or how they present themselves to the world, when they walk into an MCC church for the first time, they discover what it means to be made well. But they experience healing when they spread the word to others who have been rejected by their families, peers, and faith communities. Being made well, it seems, is what happens to us as individuals, and all of us are entitled to it. Whether you are a mature woman or a 12-year-old girl, whether you are of low status or you are privileged, regardless of your gender, your sexual orientation, your physical or mental ability, your religion, the color of your skin, your ethnicity, or your citizenship status, you deserve to be made well. You deserve to experience the wholeness that comes with being in community with others. Jesus invites everyone to God's banquet table of love. Everyone is invited to experience the liberation that comes from being made well. but we are also invited to experience a healing of our own spirits as we work to heal the world. We experience peace and healing when we do something with the future that God has given us. It looks different for different people. It certainly would have looked different for the two women in our text, and it looks just as different for you and me. So you might want to ask yourself today what healing looks like for you and your circumstances. How might you be an active participant in furthering the reign of God on earth? Whose life might you touch in such a way that they feel worthy of love? It may be tempting to go no further than thanking God for making us well, but we are invited to do more. Just as the brave woman in this morning's text was told to go in peace and be healed, even though she had already been made well, we are also invited to go in peace and find healing through serving others. May we come to know what true peace and healing are as we use our circumstances to touch the lives of other people. Amen.